Well, hello everyone, Texie88 here and welcome to another video. Now we're taking a look at another board game. This time we're taking a look at Heat, Pedal to the Metal, published by Days of Wonder and released in 2022. Days of Wonder are probably best known for being the distributors of the very popular Ticket to Ride board game series. And as you probably guessed by the cover illustration, this board game sort of centres on motor racing. So without further ado, let's take a look at the box. Well, there's the front of the box. Of course, maybe I won't flip it over. We can wait. So I'm just gonna try and take the lid off. And here's what's inside. This is a backing card for the Legends racers. I'll explain more about those later. This is used if you're doing championships. And I'll come back to these in a moment. Here's the core rules booklet. As you can see, it says read this booklet first. As there's quite a few different ways of playing this particular board game, and this takes you through the most basic form of the game, and explains how everything works. This is the advanced play and championship system. Once you got used to the game in its core form, you can start to introduce a mixture of different modes of playing. And such as a garage module where you can get all sorts of different cards that you can use that can potentially give you some benefits, or in some cases some drawbacks, or a mixture of both. Legends module, which effectively allows you to have at least one bot driver, which is actually what this is for. And road conditions tokens, I'll get back to them later. Weather and road conditions module, and championship. And I showed you the card that's the backing card that's used for championships, and tournament mode, and a rundown of the different systems that are across the garage cards and weather cards and tokens that I mentioned a few moments ago. So there are two double-sided boards in this. Each side has a track on it. So we'll take a look at each one in turn. So it's very hard to do this with one hand. So here's the, actually I'll turn that the other way up because it's upside down. The perils of having to do this with one hand. So here's the track for France, and on the other side is Great Britain. This is arguably the most challenging track of the courses that are available in this box. And here's the other double-sided board with 2 more tracks in it. Italia, Italy as we'd call it in English. And if we flip that over, eventually we get USA. Now the core rulebook advises newcomers to the game to play on this particular track first. I'm actually going to leave the USA track out while I show you the rest of the box. And speaking of which, here we are. So we've got a pad here, and this is used only for the championships, which consist of usually 3 or 4 races in turn. You can keep each other's score depending on what positions they come in each race. And as you can see, there are all the 6 different colours of car that are in this particular box. And they're the actual cars themselves and the gear sticks. And now that I've shown you the cars, I'm going to show you some of the dashboard cards that I really briefly saw earlier. There's the one for the blue car. There's the one for the yellow car. The one for the green car. The one for the red car. The one for the black car, and the one for the grey car. And all of them can show much the same details generally, just some slight differences in the decoration and obviously the colour of this bit, which indicates which coloured car it relates to. A side game, everyone's given the corresponding car colour and the gear stick of them, which initially would go on the number 1, showing that they were in first gear. And that gear stick marker would help them to keep track of what gear they're in, so that they know which gears they can potentially change to on their next turn. But anyway, going back to the box. Here's a set of speed cards that are coloured green. So these would be used solely by the player controlling the green car, and there are three basic cards for each of the numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. And in addition, used in the most basic version of the gameplay, there's also a card with the number 0 on it, and it's not a basic card because see that the basic cards have this speedometer symbol on them. These ones don't, so they're not basic cards. That does actually play an important part in gameplay. That's all clearly explained. There's also a card with the number 5 on it, and there's also a heat card. More about the heat card later. So that's what's in that upper left corner. Go down to the next one. These are sponsorship cards. Those are only used in the championships. These are the cards that dictate how the Legends races, the bot races I mentioned earlier, behave. These are just like these are the cards that are used for the grey player. With the same set of cards as I showed for the green player a few moments ago. Similarly for the yellow player. These are some basic garage cards. Remember, I briefly touched on garage cards. And those are the most. These are the most basic versions of the garage cards. These are all cards related to the championship. Some of the corner and there are cards showing corners with the letters A, B, C, D, E, or whatever, and those are used whenever you have a championship. You would refer to the race you're about to do, and there'd be a press photographer at the corner with the letter or letters shown. In that particular case, it would be A, and there are two such things provided with the game. You simply put them on the corner as indicated on that map. Don't worry if that sounds complicated. The rules of the championships are explained in that advanced play and championship system. But now these are the speed cards used by the blue player. These are corner and other track effects that are used if you're using the weather effects thing. These are either placed on corners or in sectors between corners. Here's an example of one that would be a sector between corners, and you'd put it on, and these go on the tents that are on all the tracks. There are tents at every corner, and also at somewhere on each sector. A sector being a whole area of the track between one corner and the next. And these are some weather effects cards. And I'll explain a bit more about those a bit later. I won't show you that because that's the pad I showed you earlier. These are the cards, speed cards used by the black car player. Similarly for red, these are more advanced garage cards. You can tell they're more advanced because they have this spanner in the cog symbol on the bottom of them. The other ones don't have that, so they're very easy to tell which one. And I've just got this in there to keep them separate, but we've got a selection of heat cards and stress cards. And stress cards being representing those sort of unplanned things that might happen during a race, and every time you play a stress card as one of the cards to determine your speed, all you know is that it would be one of the basic cards. So the card would ultimately represent a speed from 1 to 4. And if we look back at the USA track, which, as I said earlier, is the track that is advised that people do for their first ever race, as it's arguably the simplest and least difficult. On every track, you see details like how many laps are done for that particular race. In this case, 2. How many actual spaces that there are to complete a lap, in this case 69, and how many corner lines there are. You also get a guide to how many heat cards that every player has to have in their engine and how many stress cards they have in their draw deck. And there's some position markers for whenever cars finish the race. There's the first 6 places have scores on, but you'd only use those if you're doing a championship. There's the starting grid on the USA track. And there's one of those tents I told you about. This is on a sector because it's not a corner line. Here's an example of a corner line. This line here with a maximum speed limit number on it. In this case, 7. And if there was one of those special effect tokens to go on this corner, you'd put it on this particular tent. And there's another corner again with a tent for such a thing. In this case, a maximum speed limit of 3. And if we again go back to the grey car, I'll show you how this works. So if you're playing this, you'd have your car on the starting grid somewhere, and along the line, notice that that this side has a thick white line, and at this corner line it actually switches sides. That can happen, and that thick white line is present on all of the tracks in Heat Pedal to the Metal, and that is the racing line. And that's actually quite important, because if you ever have 2 cars next to each other like that, then the one in the racing line has priority. And a car would always stick to the racing line unless its movement takes it to a space where there's already a car occupying that bit. Cars can pass through one another, but they cannot actually land on the same space. So if a car would have been taken to an area which has both slots filled with a car, then it has to stop at the last available space in the area before it, again keeping to the racing line unless there's already a car there. So because there are 6 heat cards for this race under normal circumstances, that middle section which has the engine symbol on it, every player would put 6 heat cards in there. And if I'm just going to and here are the cards, speed cards for the grey driver. So I'm just going to give you a few quick goes to show how this works. Sorry about that slight interruption there. But this is a draw pack which is face down. And as I said, these are the heat cards in your engine. Those allow you to take certain risks and get certain advantages, but they can be a problem. But they can be a problem if you have too many of them in your hand. So my car's the grey car. So at the top of each dashboard are the different steps you can take. These first two steps are done by every human player at the same time. You can, and that means you need to choose which gear you're in first. You can either stay in the gear you're in or go up or down one gear or 2 gears. Although if you go up or down by 2 gears, you have to pay 1 heat. And when someone says pay heat, you take the requisite number of cards from the engine and put it straight into your discard pile, face up. Every card that goes into your discard area is face up, always. So I'm currently in gear 1, so I could choose to either go up 1 gear or up 2 gears. I can go up, so I'll go up 1 gear. Before I forget, once people's draw packs ready, they take 7 cards from the top of it, and this becomes their hand. Normally you wouldn't be showing the other people your cards and during this stage, but I'm just putting them out so I can illustrate what happens. So those 7 cards are my hand, and because I'm currently in gear 2, that means I can actually play 2 cards from my hand. And you may have also noticed that there's numbers going around the board. This number tells you how many spaces you've got until you come to the next corner line. So I'm 12 spaces away from the first corner line. So because I'm in gear 2, I'm actually going to play these 2 cards, 4 and 5. The other 5 stay in my hand, which would be out of sight. And once, as I said, everyone does the bit where I chose the cards I play to. Under normal game circumstances, they'd be face down, but again, I'm showing them face up just to illustrate what happens. But had there been 2 or more people playing, these would be face down, so people couldn't see what other people had played and potentially give themselves some advantages. Again, more about that in a moment. Then once everyone was ready and had done stages 1 and 2, everyone would declare, and then we'd go on to stage 3. And it goes in order of the person who's in front, then the next in front, and then the next one, and then work your way backwards until you get to the one in last position. Again, because I'm closest to the racing line, I would go first. These numbers in the top left and top right corner of the cards are the speed. Because I'm playing 2 cards, one has the speed of 4 and the other has the speed of 5. That means I'm entitled to go on 9 spaces this turn. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Again, staying close to the racing line. So the bit I've just done is where I move the speed matching what's on the cards I played. This stage here, stage 4, I would only be able to do that if I was in last position, or if there were 5. Sorry, it's a bit blurry. Or if there were 5 or more cars on the track, the people in this step would only be available to the people in the people who are penultimate and last ones to go. And this means if I were last or second from last in a game of with 5 or more cars on the track, then that means I could choose to increase my speed by 1, which would entitle me to go another square, and or if I had any heat cards in my hand, not in the cards I played, but in my hand, I'd be able to cool down by putting, in this case, 1, because it's got number 1 in that cool thermometer symbol. I could put 1, if I had a heat card in my hand, I could put up to 1 of those back in my engine. And after that you go on to stage 5. This is the react stage, where I can cool down, usually according to the gear I'm in. If I were in gear 1 and I had any heat cards in my hand, I could put up to 3 of those heat cards back in my engine. I'm in gear 2, so if I had any heat cards in my hand, which as you saw earlier I don't, then I would have been able to put 1 of those back in my engine. You don't get that option with gears 3 or 4. They don't have a cooldown symbol with a number in them next to them. So if you're in gear 3 or 4, you cannot do that. Then after that, if you wished, you could play a heat card and boost. And if I did that, then I'd have to pay 1 heat card. From my engine, and keep turning over until I get a basic card. As I mentioned earlier, the basic cards are the cards with the speedometer symbol in them. So, and if that wasn't a basic card, i.e. a stress card, a heat card, or the cards with a 0 or 5 on them, which as you saw earlier don't have the speedometer symbol on them, then you'd keep on turning and face up into your discard pile until you did come across such a card. So because the boost I did during the react stage added another 2 to my speed, that means I'm entitled to move my car on another 2 spaces. 1, 2. Which after that we take a look at step 6, slipstreaming. I cannot do this because I'm not behind nor next to another car. If I were, then I could actually go on 2 spaces as long as the target space had at least one square that was clear of cars. I mean, if it wasn't, you could still slipstream one square, but unless of course that bit's blocked as well. And step 7 only applies if you pass the corner line. As you see there, I didn't actually pass that corner line. My move took me short of it, so step 7 doesn't apply. Step 8 is the discard stage, where you, as well as the cards you played, which always sort of go face up in your discard pile. Sorry, not the black car there. You can also discard any or all of the cards from your hand that don't have this crossed out bin symbol on them. The heat cards also have that same symbol. If you have stress cards or heat cards in your hand, you are not allowed to discard them at the discard stage. That's what that symbol means. But any cards that you don't want to keep on your next turn, you would simply discard. That's an optional stage. Why would you want to discard that? For instance, if you're coming up to this corner and you had several cards that had really high numbers that could put you too much over the speed limit and force you to pay lots of heat potentially, you might want to discard from the high numbered cards and greatly increase your chance of getting low numbered cards to keep your speed from going too much over the speed limit when you came to cross the corner line. So I'm happy to keep those in my hand, so I don't wish to discard any cards from my hand. And the last stage, stage 9, which is compulsory. Any stage that's compulsory has this warning symbol on it. So that's telling me I need to draw back up to put my hand back up to 7 cards. So there are 5 cards in there. So I draw 2, and now my hand's back up to 7. Now, just for illustrative purposes, I'm going to use this black card to explain certain things. But after everyone else, in order from first to last, had their turn, then it would be on to the next round, and we'd be going back to everyone, all human players, doing their steps 1 and 2, where they choose the gear and speed. So this time I'm going to go up to gear 3. This means I can play 3 cards, because the gearing tells you how many cards you play on during step 2. You've got to play that number of cards, no more, no less. So this time I'm going to play a stress card and the 3 and the 1. Whereas the rest just stays in my hand. And again, we'd wait until everyone had selected their the cards they wish to play, which, as I said, would normally be face down. Then when the time came for a player to take their turn, they'd reveal to everyone the cards they chose to play. And because I picked a stress card, do you remember I had to keep turning over when I did that boost in the previous turn? Well, for stress cards, you have to do the same thing. You keep turning over until you get a basic card. And the first basic card is what the speed that stress card represents. So now I know my total speed for this turn is 4 plus 3 plus 1. So my speed for this turn is 8. So I move my car on 8 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now I got up there this time because, as I mentioned earlier, the racing line swaps to the other side of the track after that particular corner line. Now, just to illustrate, I'm going to put this black car here. If we pretend that there was another player controlling the black car, if my card ended up space behind it, I'm going to explain the slipstreaming when we get there. But first things first. Now we've just done the movement of moving 8. Again, that would only apply if you're in last place or penultimate or last place if you had 5 or more cars in the race. This is where we can choose to cool down or boost. Well, can't cool down because I'm in gear 3, which doesn't entitle me to do that. Only in gears 1 and 2 can you do that. And I could choose to boost, which is what I did last time, but I'm not going to do it this time. And so on to the next bit. The reason I've put this black car here is to show you how the slipstream works. if after when you've done your movement and all your reactions and so forth, you ended up in a space behind, as is the case, a car, as is the case here, or even next to a car. See step 6 there. It says I can slipstream. So that would allow me to go 2 spaces as long as both spaces were clear. If there were cars in this, then I'd only be able to slipstream 1 space, and if there were cars in all this and this, then I wouldn't be able to slipstream at all because all the squares would be blocked. So slipstreaming would allow me to go on 2 spaces, and it's worth noting that slipstreaming does not increase your speed. So my speed is still 8, it's not 10, even though I've gone on 2 extra spaces, because slipstreaming does not add to your speed the way anything else does. And speaking of speed, this time I did pass the corner line, because if you remember, I passed this corner, and as you can see, it's this corner, that particular corner has a speed limit of 7, and as we know, the speed that I went was 8, so that is 1 over. So for each unit of speed over the speed limit of any corner line you cross, you must pay heat amounting to the excess. So because I was 1 over the speed limit, I've got to pay 1 heat from my engine straight into my discard pile. So that's step 7 done, the corner stage. And now we discard. So all of these go in the discard pile on my dashboard. And this is my hand. Do I want to get rid of any of these? Well, I can't get rid of this stress card nor this heat card, as they both got that crossed out bin symbol on. But I will get rid of the 0. I will discard the 0 and the 1 because I'm on a straight and my car is 12 away from the next corner. I don't really need any low numbered cards. So I've got 2 cards in my hand, so I simply do step 9, which is to draw back up to 7 from my draw deck. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then when it was the next round, I'll take that black car away now. I was just using it to illustrate how slipstreaming can work. So once the next round started, where everyone was having to select their gear and speed again, this time I'm going to go up to gear 4, which means I can play 4 cards from my hand. So here are the cards that I've got in my hand. So I'm 12 away from the next corner. So, and because the next corner has a speed limit of 3, I don't think it'd be a good idea to go past it at too high a speed. So I've got to keep 12 in mind. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So those are the cards I elected to play. Again, they'd be face down until all players had done and selected their gear and chosen the cards from their hand that they were going to play. Then once everyone's declared themselves ready, we do step 3, where each person in turn, from first place to last place, reveals their cards showing their speed, which in this case, my speed is 11, 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 2, which means I can move my car 11 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And that's put me 1 space away from that next corner. I can't, so there's that adrenaline stage which only lasts, only the back player or players, as mentioned earlier, can do. So this is where I could potentially cool down if I were in a low enough gear, which I'm not, because I'm not in gear 1 or 2, I'm in gear 4, which doesn't have any cooldown symbols by it. And there's no way I'm going to boost because my speed's 11, and if I were to go past this corner line at a speed like that, I mean, if I boosted and got a 1, I'd be all right, but if I didn't, I'd be in serious trouble because I'd have to pay an enormous amount of heat, and you never have enough to go potentially 13, speed of 13 past a corner with a maximum speed limit of 3. And if you couldn't meet the heat payment when passing a corner line at too fast a speed, you'd pay whatever you had from your engine and then spin out, and you'd be penalised with additional stress cards depending on the gear you're in at the time of spinning out, which is all outlined on underneath the heat cards. If you span out through going too fast around a corner, and if you were in gear 1 or 2, you'd gain an additional stress card. If you're in gear 3 or 4, you gain 2 additional ones in your gear, and spinning out causes your gear to go straight back to 1. And you'd be placed behind the corner placed just before the corner line of the corner that you failed to take. So as I said, my speed was 11, so I'm not going to boost because of the risk of me getting a 2, 3 or 4 as the card that the boost would represent is too high. And then there'd be slipstreaming next if that was possible. I didn't pass any corner lines this turn, so it's straight to the discard, where cards I played go straight into my discard pile on my dashboard. This time, because I've got a low corner, I'm going to keep that 1, and I'm not allowed, and I have no choice but to keep these cards because of that symbol being on there. I'm not allowed to discard those at the discard stage. It's against the rules. So because I've got 3 cards in my hand, I draw back to 7. But I've only got 2 here, so what happens here is that I need to shuffle my discard pile. And then once I've shuffled that discard pile, I've placed it face down. It becomes my new draw pack. So, and because I've only got 5 in my hand, now I finish off going back to 7 cards in my hand in preparation for the next round. Then once the next round started, we'd have to choose our gear. Now, because this next corner has a really low speed limit, 3 in this case, and I'm in gear 4, I might have to go down 2 gears because I may be going too fast if I. As you can see, because I played heat cards doing previously, now one of those heat cards has ended up in my hand. So I've actually got 2 heat cards in my hand. One that's the one that's personal to me that I showed you near the beginning, and one of the general heat cards. You can't actually willfully play heat cards. You only play those if you have play any or heat cards if you have no choice in order to make up the number of cards you have to play depending on the gear you're in. And if you are forced to play even one heat card during your turn, you will not be able to move, and you'll have to go down to gear 1, and you'll skip all the intervening stages and go straight to drawing back up to 7. You don't even get to discard if you're unable to move because of having to because of being forced to play a heat card. So that's why you don't particularly want to have too many of those in your hands, because it can complicate matters in that way and potentially prevent you from being able to move for at least one turn. That's why it's a good idea to try and cool down at times. So I'm currently in gear 4, and because many of my cards with actual numbers on are quite high, I'm going to go down 2 gears. So I go straight from gear 4 to gear 2. But because going down 2 gears has this heated engine symbol with number 1 in it, that means I have to pay 1 heat card to do that. Similar, I would have had to have done the same thing if I'd gone up by 2 gears. Obviously I couldn't do that because gear 4 there aren't any more gears higher than 4, so I couldn't go up even 1 gear from 4. But because I'm about to take a corner with a low speed limit, that's why I dropped down 2 gears, so I'd only have to play 2 cards. I don't have 1 and 2 on it, so I'm going to play these cards. So these would be face down until everyone had declared themselves ready and done their stages 1 and 2. When that was clear and it was my turn to move, then I'd reveal the cards I'd played. That's a speed of 4, so I'd move on 1, 2, 3, 4. The racing line didn't switch sides, so I still stay on the inside of the track here. And because and there's the adrenaline stage, which I mentioned you can only do if you're in last place or penultimate or last place if there are 5 or more cars racing. I'm definitely not going to boost, but because I'm in gear 2, which has the cooldown symbol with number 1 in it, that means I can look at my hand and get rid of up to 1 of the heat cards in it. Well, not get rid of it. Cooling down means that heat cards go back into your engine. So I was able to put 1 of those 2 heat cards back in my engine. So, and I can't slipstream because I'm not next to or behind a car at the end of my movement. But I did pass a corner line. I passed that corner line. And I passed it with a speed of 4. So because that's 1 over, I need to pay 1 heat for the excess. If I'd gone past with a speed of 5, past that corner, I would have had to have paid 2 heat cards in that way. If I'd gone past it at the speed of 6, I would have had to have paid 3 heat cards. And then it's discard and draw back to 7. So the cards I played go into my discard pile, plus any other cards that I choose that don't have the crossed out bin symbol on them. So if I wanted to get rid of any, if I wanted to discard any cards, then this one is the only one I can do because the others have this crossed out bin symbol on them. And then I would draw back up to 7 in preparation for the next round. So I've got 3 cards, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on, and that would continue until we'd done the requisite number of laps and passed all players were past the finish line. And the way the finish line works is that if you've got lots of different racers, if blue, say, if blue had moved, even though they were the one in front, and even though they're first past the line, that doesn't necessarily mean they've won, because if any of these other two cars manage to play cards that give them the speed that takes them beyond that and pass the finish line in the same turn, then whoever's in front are, after all players that can pass the finish line have passed the finish line. So if the green end played a speed of 3, they haven't passed the finish line. So after everyone had their turn, then whoever was furthest past the line would be said to. Sorry, whoever's furthest past the finish line would be said to be in a higher finishing position if 2 or more cars passed the finish line in a single round. So here, even though blue was the first to go, because grey played a higher speed, which took grey past blue. Grey would actually come in the higher position, so first if this was a 3-car race. But you also see that crossed out slipstream symbol there. The slipstreaming rules are not allowed to be applied. You cannot slipstream past the finish line, nor can you slipstream if you are past it. So if, for example, Gray's turn had taken them there and past the finish line, they would not be allowed to slipstream there because that symbol there doesn't permit it. You're not permitted to slipstream at all once you've passed the finish line. However, you can still boost if you have enough heat in if you have at least 1 heat card in your engine. You can still boost past the finish line. And similarly, if silver if the grey card ended up there or even there and green had a speed of 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Remember, I said that you can also slipstream if you finish your movement next to another car. But again, because of what I said, not only can you not slipstream when you are past the finish line, you cannot slipstream to take you past the finish line. So even though in the normal circumstances being next to the car would have allowed green to slipstream, because of that ruling about the finish line, you're not allowed to do that. But that's literally only at the finish line. If you're completing any of the previous laps, you can do that, because that's not the end of the race. It's only when it's passing, the case of passing this line for the last time. And then once everyone was passed on their turns, then whoever is furthest past the finish line at the end of a round is placed in first place, and in order depending on how far past the finish line, or again using the racing line, if 2 cars are next to each other, the one closest to the racing line takes priority and has the higher finishing rank. And then if there were still any cars that hadn't crossed the finish line at the end of that round, then you'd keep doing additional rounds until every car had passed. And then when they finished, they'd go on the podium as normal. So that's basically heat pedal to the metal and how it all works. The game is for 1 to 6 players, so yes, you can play the game solo, and largely thanks to those Legends racers, the bot racers that I mentioned earlier, that are controlled by the Legends cards that I showed you earlier. The ones that look like this on the front have that on. Because those dictate how how they move, and and what their speed would be, as long as they don't, as long as they wouldn't, as long as that speed wouldn't take them past a corner line. So, for example, if green was a starter bot racer and this was the card turned over, the green helmet has number 11 in. And because they're 12 away from the next corner, that means they can move their full 11 to take them to so they can move their full 11, which would take them to there. If, however, this was the Legends card turned over this round, this time the green speed is 19. It cannot move 19 because green is 12 away from the next corner. So what happens depends on whether or not the Legends line immediately before the corner in question has been passed by that car or not. As the green car hasn't passed this line, what instead happens is that you look above at this bit here. So because he hasn't passed the Legends line, he would actually go straight to the space marked 3. 3, because that's the number in the diamond immediately in the bit immediately that contains the green racer. If there were a red racer, then under the similar circumstances that would do the same thing because it's in the same section. Black one would go to space mark 2 under similar circumstances and so on. If, however, green had that and was anywhere past that Legends line, which is the last Legends line before that particular corner, then what you do is take the speed of that corner and add that number in the diamond to it. So 7 plus 3 would mean that on this turn green could move 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And it would, and that may or may not take green past the corner line, which on this turn it did. So that's how the Legends races work. If they can go the indicated speed without passing a corner line, they will. Otherwise, what they'll do will depend on whether or not they've passed the Legends line immediately before the corner that they're in question. So, for instance, the speed of 3, the Legends line for that one is here. So it's this time the Legends line is a bit closer. So going back to if you were doing the weather module, one of these would be picked at random and then actually placed over the top of this. So in this case, for this race, each player would have 1 fewer heat cards in their engine. So for this particular race, they'd only have 5 instead of the usual 6, because this -1 tells them to deduct one heat card. And if there were any sectors with a weather symbol on them of any kind, then it would have the effect shown here for any car that finished their movement in such a sector, which in this case would allow them to cool down by 1 if they, at the react stage 5, if they had any heat cards in their engine, and that is in addition to any other cooling down they might be able to do under rules already explained. So So once the weather had been decided, if you were doing that, that's where all these would come into play. So starting from the racing line, this is a sector one. This one allows a player to choose to boost without having to expend heat. This is another sector one, so it doesn't go on the corner. It goes on this tent here, which is marking the sector between this corner line and the corner line of the 3 that we've already seen. And then we take another token. This one's for a corner because it doesn't have the sector symbol on the bottom of it the way those other 2 do. So this one, that one affects the corner's speed limit by increasing it by 1. So that would mean that for this race, instead of being a 3, the speed limit of this corner line would be a 4, making it easier to get past it. So next we'd pick another one. This one's also had its speed limit increased by 1. So pick another one, which will be from this corner. And we got, now this would have been a sector one, but we've already got that one because that was the first one we placed. That's one of those weather sector ones that I told you about because it's got a weather symbol on it. The other card you can get, there's another weather symbol. It doesn't matter if the weather symbol doesn't match the actual symbol here. If it's that, then whatever's shown there takes effect in any sectors with that weather symbol on it. As you probably guessed, this one, if it were placed on a corner, would deduct 1 from the speed limit. And there's another one that deducts 1 from the speed limit. This one, if placed on a corner, any player that exceeded the speed limit would have to pay 1 additional heat card on top of the usual amount. And there are 2 of those as well. This is another sector one, so if you're in a sector where you did that and you managed to slipstream under the normal rules, you have the option to add 1 to the number of squares you can slipstream. So in this case, this would allow you to slipstream by potentially 3 spaces instead of the usual 2. And there are 2 of those as well. So that is a rundown of Heat Pedal to the Metal and a brief explanation of how the rules work. I've played this game several times since I bought it in October of 2024, and I'm really enjoying it. And there's a lot of strategy involved in balancing out being able to expend heat to give you these boosts or chances to go around a corner at a faster speed than is ideal. But you also have to bear in mind that they will eventually end up in your hand, so you need to cool down occasionally in any way you can. Most likely by being in a gear low enough to do it, or potentially being able to do it if you're the last one to move during a turn, or as mentioned, if there were 5 or more racers in a race, the one who's in the penultimate one to move during a round could also have that adrenaline option. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and about the board game Heat Pedal to the Metal. Hope to catch you on another video soon. Texie88 out.